concrete walls. There's a place for us where we could go, where we could be alone. Between city lights, we don't have to hide. I wanna go, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in a secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? I can't understand why we can't hold hands, but they don't know what we have is real love. Aren't you sick and tired of having to hide? I know a place, do you wanna follow? There's something in the air, I can't explain it, but it's there. Ain't nobody gonna find us in a secret love affair. I don't wanna have to hide no more, it shouldn't be unfair. I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow? Do you wanna follow? Baby, do you wanna follow? Come with me, do you wanna follow? Baby, can't you see that? I wanna go, and I wanna know, do you wanna follow?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. It's good to be here with you. It's good to be here with you on a Sunday afternoon or whatever time it is where you are. I was so distracted talking about my lights with no in the chat that I almost missed the cue that I was about to run out of bumper music and have to start the stream. So maybe one of these days I'll do a little studio walkthrough. Back when I first got these cabinets, which was more than a year ago. Now, shocking how time flies. I thought, oh, that would be a really good time to do like a studio walkthrough and show off my gear. And then I just never want to talk about myself. I always want to talk about, the stuff you guys are interested in. Always feels a little. Here's the thing. Whenever I think about doing a studio walkthrough, it feels just very self-indulgent. But then when one of my favorite YouTubers does a studio walkthrough, I'm always like super interested. So I guess I could do it. I don't know. Yeah. Got some lights here. They're newer bicolor LEDs. They've actually been updated since I bought them. They're better. There's different variants on them. So let's see. This one comes with barn doors. I don't use the barn doors, as you can see. I use diffusers. Barn doors are okay, but the cool thing about these is, look at this. 2 pieces for $200. They're such a good value. They're bicolor, which means you can change the color temperature. They've gotten So yeah, so unfortunately, check it out. I don't know if you can see this. Do you see that this one has white and yellow? It has separate brightness controls for each of the two LEDs. That is actually not as good because it means you can't adjust the color temperature and the brightness separately. There's an updated version of this light that has a separate control for brightness and color temperature, and it's better. This is actually the very one that I have. This is, I think, the older one. Is this it? White, yellow. Yeah, so if you are going to buy one of these, see if you can find one of the ones with the separate brightness and color control. Because it's much easier to be able to say, okay, I've got my color temperature dialed in. Now I'm going to just make it a little dimmer, right? Also, if you can get one that has the remote, that's also pretty badass. I think this is, yeah, this is what you want. Do you see? It's a little hard to see, but come on. Do you see how this one has a separate Kelvin and brightness control? This is the one that you want. It's a little more expensive. But like if you decide to tweak your color temperature or your brightness, they don't affect each other. You're not having to go back and forth. So this is $200 for two of them. See, it's the same freaking price. $200 for two of these lights. You just can't freaking beat that. You can't beat it. There are better lights. There are brighter lights. There are fancier lights that you could pay a lot more money for. But if you're on a budget and you need some lighting, these are fantastic. And then newer LED panel softbox. You get this little miniature collapsible softbox for $82. And that's literally the exact setup that I'm using, except I haven't upgraded these lights to the ones with the separate contrast and brightness and control. Yeah, there's a little behind the scenes to start us off. If you're interested, welcome to the live stream, everybody. Now I'm gonna try not to piss too many of you off with my sniffling and snuffling. My sinuses are looking good today, despite the fact that it would be better for it's better for everyone who is on the internet, but especially people who are like creators on the internet or influencers or personalities or whatever you call us. It's really essential for our mental health that we not care too much about the things people don't like about us, because here's the problem. Let's say, that you are like, you have a social group of, like, what's a typical person's social group? 30 people, 15 people. Some people are more or less social, but a typical person's social group, maybe if you're like, on a committee at your church or something, maybe you have a few hundred people who like know and think about you and care about who you are. And on some level, you kind of, oh crap, I fucked up. Hold on. You kind of got to care what those people think. But when you have 250,000 subscribers and tens of thousands of people watching your content, hundreds of people tuning into your live stream, there's always going to be a lot of people in terms of absolute numbers who think you're a total jackass and hate you. Right? Now, it may be only like, let's say it's only 5% of people who come across your content are like that. But that's still potentially thousands of people who are just telling you all the things they don't like about you. And so at some level, you have to learn to, have a thick skin. And otherwise, you just spend all day worrying about that. On the other hand, that's easier said than done. So I personally deal with it by just leaning hard into the thing that they're complaining about and trying to, because that's just a defense mechanism. But here's the problem. We are going to talk about FPV, but I always like to start the stream with just a little bit of off the cuff. Here's the problem. And I think we can see this problem happening with celebrities, lots of people who are in a position where there are a lot of people, because the flip side of that is that if you want to, you can only focus on the top 10% of people who think you're the best gosh dang thing since sliced bread. And you can get into this echo chamber. This is, in my opinion, from my limited experience as a YouTube creator, which is not the same thing at all as being like a real big celebrity, but I think there's parallels, just on a smaller scale. You could just pay attention to the 5% of the people or 10% of people who like you the most, and then you will just think your shit don't stink and you're the best thing in the world, and you'll end up with no perspective on the ways in which you're actually... See, that's the thing. The people who matter the most, in my opinion, are the people in that like 60 to 65 percentile. The people who are generally inclined to like you, but kind of go, oh man, it's so annoying when blah, blah, blah. The people who love you, like your mom's going to love you no matter what you do. That's not a good judge of whether you're an asshole. So it's really hard. It's really hard to completely ignore the people down in the 15% and below. I hate your guts, because who cares? That people are always, somebody's going to always hate you. That's okay. It's a great wide world. Go. You don't have to please everybody, but not accidentally block out the people because you get so triggered about negativity because you're exposed to, I say you, I mean me. I get so triggered about negativity because I'm exposed to so much of it on a daily basis that I have these defense mechanisms where as soon as I see negativity, I go, F that guy. I'm not watching, because it's so easy to have an emotional reaction to that. But the risk is, like a lot of times if somebody leaves a critical or a negative comment, the very first thing I'll do is I'll search their comment history on because I can do that. I'll just look at every comment you've ever left, and I'll be like, okay, is this person always shitting on me? In which case I don't have to think about what they say. Or is it like they've left 15 like normal comments and then this one is critical, in which case that I have to listen to what they're saying. It really matters. Anyway, there you go. Little thoughts about that. All right. Listen, here's what we're here for, though. Here's what we're really here for. We're here to answer your questions about FPV and other things. We're going to take questions from the YouTube chat. By the way, yeah, Cool Cat, you're right. Guys like Logan Paul, I see it happen. I see it. I mean, from the outside, it's really easy to see. Guys like Logan Paul get ultra wealthy, and you surround yourself with people, because here's the thing. Okay, I guess we're going to talk about this a tiny bit more. This topic actually fascinates me. I hope it fascinates you. When you have, and I say you, but I mean me, I get between 50 and 200 emails a day. Let's just focus on email, because those numbers, I look at my inbox every morning and I see how many unread messages I have. When you have so many people who want to communicate with you, who want your attention, who want your time, one of the ways that you deal with that is you just spend 2 or 3 hours a day dealing with that, which is my approach. Another way you deal with that is you create layers between you and the people who want to have your attention and time. You have a manager, you have a rep, you have a layer of people, and they sort of filter things upward. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. But the more those people are incentivized to protect you from negativity and feed you positivity, that sort of builds that echo chamber. It's really fascinating to see how it happens. It happens for completely innocuous reasons. And I think you look at guys like Logan Paul and you see the guys he hangs out with, at least on his videos, and you're like, oh, these guys are all just clearly just riding his dick. And there's clearly a filter where people who don't ride his dick don't make it. And that contributes to the echo chamber. But the alternative is that you just get overwhelmed by people who want your attention. It's very challenging. So I'm going to be taking your questions here. I think it's why the people who manage to stay somewhat sane, I suspect that they keep their friends from before they were famous close. Because the people who knew you before you got famous are number one, they don't have anything to be afraid of. Like you're going to be like, I don't want to talk to you unless you're just a total shallow dickhole. I think those people are the most important. Anyway. I'll be taking your questions here. Let's get through this. I'll be taking questions over here in the Discord. This is my Discord server, in case you're new here. These are my patrons. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. I'll be taking your questions, like this question. Let's take a question here. This will be the next question we take from Building with Logan. And if you want to hit the $ right down here, this is the only way to 100%, what, 99.9%. Occasionally I miss one by accident. This is the only way to 100% make sure that I get your message is to leave a super chat. Definitely will be getting into those in just a little bit. But let's start ourselves off with this question from Building with Logan. What? Building with Logan, why is your message not showing up in my... Am I getting any Discord messages here? Has it picked up Discord? Hang on. Come on, baby. Reload the page. My little chat plugin isn't picking up the Discord messages, and I don't know why. Okay. Well, that's unfortunate. There you go. I guess we're not going to be putting Discord messages on screen. Building with Logan asked... No, I've lost his message. Fuck. Oh, oops. I'm sorry. I try not to swear on stream. Apparently I'm cutting loose today. Why is Control F not working? Building with Logan's question was, is the O3 air unit worth it? Is the O3 air unit worth it? Thank you, Guillermo. Why did Guillermo's message pop up? Is the O3 air unit worth it? So first of all, let's just look at, because worth it is subjective, right? Some people don't think that digital is worth it. They just fly analog and they're like, it's not worth it. So let's acknowledge that there's no objective answer to that. One thing I like to do when I ask this question is I look at, are other people buying this product and loving it? So if my initial reaction to something like that is, no, it's not worth it, but then I see that everybody and their brother's buying it and loving it, I have to acknowledge that to some people, it's definitely worth it. Now, I'm not saying that is my reaction, but the O3 air unit is, what is it at, 220 now? 220, I believe. Let me just double check that. DJI O3 air unit, $230, compared to about $160 for a V2 system. Since you're already in the range where you're paying that much money, I'm going to guess that for most people who would pay, say, $160 for the V2 system, they're going to be able to stretch to get up to that $230. That's an additional $60, $260, $160, $40, $70, sorry. That's a fair whack up. Maybe that would lock some people out. The advantage of the O3 air unit is significantly better image detail and resolution. And I don't mean just because the O3 air unit is capable of outputting 1080p or 810p, while the V2 system only outputs 720p. And by the way, the difference between 720 and 810 is pretty small, but it exists. The difference between 720 and 1080 is definitely noticeable. I think that the O3 just generally does a better job with the bitrate that it has. Maybe that's because it uses H.265 encoding instead of H.264 like the V2 system. I don't know, but generally I do think you're getting a noticeable, certainly at least noticeable, some people would say significant, I would say at least noticeable uptick in image resolution and detail. You also, I think you're getting a noticeable uptick in range and penetration. And I don't know how, if they just have made it better. If there's one thing I've learned about DJI, it's that today they will release a product that makes you go, damn, that's pretty good. DJI, nice work. And then 2 years later, they'll release another product, and you'll go, whoa, you made it better. I mean, I was already impressed. And now somehow you raise the bar again. And they really do have an ability to keep raising the bar when already they've done things that other people would say are out of reach. I mean, yeah, I think not everybody is going to love them. Not everybody's going to want what they're selling. But I do think from a technical perspective, they consistently raise the bar, and they've done that with the O3 system. The downside of the O3, though, and frankly, I haven't switched to the O3. Not that I like build new quadcopters for myself. Like, I'm not the guy who, as soon as a new thing comes out, I throw away all my quadcopters. I build 27 new ones. There are people out there who do that. They're like, I have to have the latest. I'm not talking about like normal people. I'm talking about professionals. They always want to have the latest. They always want to be on whatever the new hotness is. And their whole fleet will just be all O3s now. Fine. Just drop the money. I'm not that guy. But more importantly, the O3, the dynamic range is really bad. The dynamic range is really bad. And honestly, I'm going to see if I can find... I'm going to see if I can find some footage for you, just that demonstrates this a little bit. I mean, if you've flown it, I think you know what I'm talking about, but... Here we go. Like, this is just a random flight that I grabbed. And when I say the dynamic range is really bad, dynamic range is the difference between the darkest and the brightest values that the camera can display. So I don't just mean that the shadows are dark. So for example, hold on, let me just screen grab this. I'll just take this exact frame and I'm going to bring it into Photoshop. 507RC, I know about this new firmware. I want to talk about that too. Hold on. But let's just work through this. Hello, Photoshop, where are you? Photoshop has decided not to. What are we doing? Why is Photoshop not starting? Photoshop, what's wrong with you? Come on. Come on, baby. There we go. So people are suggesting that it has to do with the exposure, and it does somewhat, but also somewhat not. I don't think it's 100% a problem with the exposure. Sit tight 1 second here. Photoshop, come on, baby. Work with me here. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and I've got a screen grab of this image, and you see how there's just no detail here in the shadows. We've lost a lot of detail in the shadows. Now, if the problem was one of exposure, then what we could do, hang on, is we could bring it in and we could adjust the exposure. I'm going to do that right now. So here we are, and we're going to adjust the exposure. So for example, I can try and lift these shadows. And you see that as I lift the shadows, I am getting some of that detail back. That's actually pretty good. Now I've had to raise the shadows all the way up, and you can see that we've got a ton of grain or noise here. Hello, zoom in here. We've got a ton of noise here, right? It's looking pretty bad, but I was able to kind of recover this just by lifting the shadows all the way up. I did bring back that detail. Now this is a relatively low contrast image because it's a cloudy day, but we're already kind of at the limit of what the camera can do. I wonder if I have a shot from a sunnier day. I don't, not that day. What about O3? O3 was, oh, is this a sunny day? I see blue sky. Oh, I see blue sky. Okay, let's try this image. Let's see if we can demonstrate this. Talking about why the O3 camera the biggest problem with the O3 camera. So here's another image from a sunnier day. Again, just a random image grab. Let's see what happens if we try to lift the shadows on this one. Well, I got a little bit of detail back. That's actually a little better than I was expecting. Let's try one more. Let's see if I can find one where the sun is in the sky and the ground is super dark as a result. Okay, this is a worst case scenario, but let's see if we can demonstrate the point. All right, so this is a worst case scenario because we're pointed right at the sky. If we lift the shadows on this, what happens? Damn. Actually, that's I gotta say, this is the first. Literally, this is the first time I've done this experiment. I've been thinking about making a video about this for a little while, and I haven't actually tested this. I'm kind of actually impressed. I expected there to be less detail there than there actually is. There actually is detail in the shadows. Holy shit. Look right here, if you don't know what I mean by that. As I raise the exposure, we have information here. It's not just that it's black there. The information is there. That's really interesting. So what I was going to say is the dynamic range on the camera is really bad. And because the dynamic range is bad, you're going to lose shadow detail or lose highlight detail. Adjusting the camera's exposure algorithm can't fix that. If you only have this much dynamic range, you can move that window up or down to change the exposure, but you can't widen that value. But it actually seems like it has more dynamic range than it's giving us, and maybe if we were to do something like a new sort of tone mapping, we could get some of that shadow detail back. The V2 cameras, for whatever reason, the V2 cameras seem to have much better dynamic range than the O3 and seem to give you more information as a pilot when you're flying into a dark area. So that would be another reason to prefer the V2. I got to try this new firmware because maybe they actually have more information to give than they're actually giving us. The other thing this new firmware does is it gives 10-bit mode, which if the information is there, could help. Brandon Beans, that was not decine-alike, and it was not post-update. That was standard color. Ghost Branch FPV says, what you're doing there paints a completely wrong picture. If you were to apply this to a full video, the exposure algorithm would ruin it. Ghost Branch, that's a very good point. You could set the exposure correctly for a single frame, but then if you have to turn that exposure up for one frame, it'll be overexposed in another. DJI still needs to improve their exposure algorithm. But my question was, if the camera doesn't have enough dynamic range, there's really not a lot you can do to fix that. You could try and work around it, but at the end of the day, a camera with more dynamic range will generally do a better job. So other reasons that you might stay away from the O3, mounting it in the frame. Not all frames really do a great job with the camera mounting. The camera is very difficult to mount in such a way that it doesn't stick out and get damaged, versus having standoffs in view. Manufacturers will eventually solve this with custom frames, but for the time being, it's still... What does he mean by the V2 camera? I mean like the Vista video transmitter, the Runcam Falcon, the Runcam Link, the Caddx Vista, the original DJI camera, the Nebula Pro, all of those cameras from the V2 system, before the O3, basically. The question is, can they fix it with firmware? Well, that just depends on the capabilities of the sensor. What determines a camera's dynamic range, asks Timberline. Camera's dynamic range, this is a question that I'm not qualified to answer, because I have seen people who are good, who know about cameras, discuss the answer, and it is a very complicated question. with many, many facets. And I don't know what all of them are, but the camera's dynamic range is related to the design of the camera more so than like the firmware. Things like the size of the photo sites on the sensor. One of the things that people are confused by is they say the O3, and I've said this until somebody set me straight, and I was like, oh, that's very interesting. I was very confused that the O3 camera seems to have worse dynamic range than the V2 cameras, because the O3 has a much bigger sensor. And generally, a bigger sensor will have larger photo sites, and therefore it will have more sensitivity and or better dynamic range. But the O3 sensor is a 4K sensor, and the V2 cameras are a 720p sensor. So although the O3 camera sensor is bigger, it has denser photo sites, and the photo sites are actually smaller. I did the math. I don't remember the exact ratio, but that's not the only thing that affects dynamic range, but it does play into it. So, anyway, is the O3 camera worth it? After 20 minutes of debate discussing this, I think it's a really interesting topic. I think that for a lot of people it is, just if only because it does give you good enough. It gives you good 1080. It could do 4K onboard recording. If it lets you get rid of your GoPro, it's 1,000% worth it. It's just a question of whether the low light sensitivity, which by the way is also pretty poor, and the dynamic range and the exposure algorithm work for you while you're flying. And that's very difficult to answer until you try it. Okay. Let's take some super chats and then we'll get back to the regular questions. We've got a super chat here from Wyatt. Oh, wait, there was one super chat at the beginning that I didn't read, and I think I reloaded the page or something, and it got wiped. Let me just make sure that I don't miss that super chat. Super chats, I would hate to miss the very first super chat. See all. It's going to be before Wyatt Humphreys. January 2nd. No. That's all January 2nd. This is the 8th. Is that... Why are these only from the 2nd? January 1st, January 2nd. Where are the 8th? I don't see them. Well, I guess I didn't miss one. Okay, if I missed your super chat, let me know, and I'll definitely try to pay attention for that. Wyatt Humphreys, if I put a clockwise prop on a counterclockwise motor on the Bardwell DIY, it freaked out. Yes. Now the last two beeps don't happen on startup. Did I fry the ESC? No, you fried the flight controller, but that shouldn't fry the flight controller. That's silly. Simply freaking out because you had the prop on wrong, the flight controller should obviously survive that. Missing last two beeps is a good ESC, but the flight controller is not alive. Either the wire came disconnected or the flight controller simply died. Plug in the battery. Look at the flight controller. Do the LEDs light up? If no, then it's dead. If yes, then why don't you have the last two beeps? I think you should reach out to support at getfpv.com. Whenever a piece of hardware dies and there's a chance that it shouldn't have died. Now, like, I don't know. If they look at your flight controller and it's obvious that there are other factors that caused it to fail, and I'm not going to try to elaborate on what that might be, then they may say, sorry, this isn't covered. But if it's like, if you just built it, it's brand new, you barely flown it, you put the prop on wrong, it flipped out, and now the flight controller is dead, if those are the facts of the situation and there are no other mitigating factors, I would hope that they would say, hey, look, that's on us. We would replace that for you. I'm trying to hedge this very carefully because I don't want you to go to support at getfpv.com and say, Bardwell told me on his live stream that you were going to replace this for me. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you should at least go ask and say, look, my flight controller died. This is how it died. Seems like that shouldn't have happened. Is there anything, what are your thoughts about this? Mupshot, thank you for that super chat. This is Justin Waller, $10 super chat. Justin, I got you. How do I flip the high and low on an EdgeTX switch for my ExpressLRS ARM switch? Yeah, Mupshot, thank you for that. There are two ways to do that. Number one, in the mixer screen, change the weight of the aux channel from 100 to -100. That will invert the channel. That is my preference for how to do it. Number 2, in the outputs screen, there is a tick box to invert the channel. Now, I prefer to do it all in the mixer screen because I seldom use the output screen is great for if you have servos and you just need to reverse a servo real quick. But I usually use the mixer screen, not the output screen, because I'll just forget that the output screen is there. So go in the mixer screen for that aux channel, change the weight parameter from 100 to -100. It'll invert the channel. Yep, I do the same thing, Mupshot, because of my muscle memory for where the arm is. Unmanned Sky, thank you for a $5 super chat. What's your opinion of the Luma 30 Cinewhoop with the T-motor? All right, let's see what my opinion about that is. Luma Quad. Well, I think their website is awfully cute. Oh, man. Oh, I like this. I like this website. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's... Oh, that video could be a little longer. It feels a little abrupt. I'm just getting into it. Oh! No, okay. I think it's not... I don't know if it's supposed to be doing that. Uh-huh. Yeah, put that screw in there. Oh, I'm just getting in. I'm just getting into it, and it cuts off. Ooh. Uh-huh. Screw that screw in. Oh, nope. Alrighty. Enough about that. Sorry. I'm going to watch this later by myself. Luma Cinewhoop. There's a Cinewhoop. Luma 30 full frame kit. Luma 30. You got a bind and fly? Store. Luma 30. Why did I hit Luma 30 in the store, but now I'm not looking at things related to the Luma? Okay, store, Luma 30, collections, Luma 30. There we go. Are they selling? They're not selling a bind and fly. Okay. Maybe they do sell it somewhere else. Store. No, it looks like... Do they not have a bind and fly? Seems like they would. What do we got? Let's look at this frame. It's interesting. It's... Oh, I really... Can we have more pictures? Do we have more pictures? Your website's pissing me off. Can I do that? No, I don't want the full-size image. Okay, that's good. Okay, I think I've got this figured out now. Your website's pissing me off. I just want to see some pictures of your... Damn it! It's reloading the page every time I... Oh, you're killing me. You're killing me. Okay. So what do we got here? It looks like it is... Is it a single piece bottom plate? It looks like it's a single piece bottom plate. Rectangular. It looks like it's one piece. So, in general, a one-piece bottom plate is going to have worse resonance characteristics than a multi-piece bottom plate. Because the joints between the carbon fiber pieces, like if you've got separate arms that bolt in, the joints are going to sort of help mitigate the resonance, whereas when you have one big piece, it'll have one strong resonant frequency. Also, smaller pieces will have higher resonant frequencies generally. So I know a lot of Cinewhoops do have a single piece bottom plate, and they're fine. But my first question would be whether there would be resonance issues due to the single piece bottom plate. And I would want to investigate that more. It looks like we have single prop guards held on by the motor's mount on them From a maintenance perspective, it's going to be easier to swap one if it breaks. But we also have more potential here because we've got this large piece of whatever. I mean, it's probably not that much mass. We've basically got this big thing hanging off this one attachment point. And again, it makes me wonder about resonance, and also because it's not braced to anything. So this prop guard here is not braced to the frame. It's not braced to the other prop guard. So if you smack into something, it's just going to bend to the side and get in the prop. Now, that's true for all prop guards, right? None of them like that. It's going to be more true for this, though, because it has no additional bracing anywhere else. It is a generic school bus style frame, bottom plate, top plate. I actually like that. It's easier to build and maintain them. A lot of Cinewhoops go for extremely compact frames that stuff all the electronics in a way that's a lot harder to maintain. However, it means probably that the size, the wheelbase is going to be a little bit larger. If you need an absolute smallest that you can get, this is going to take up a little more space, but it'll be a little easier to maintain. And the other question is how the flight characteristics are going to be, which of course we can't tell just by looking at the frame. But with a Cinewhoop, the flight characteristics are more affected by the frame design because the Cinewhoops are generally have less a performance envelope because they're generally pretty heavy for the amount of thrust that they have. So we'd want to know how it flies. Yeah. So, those are some thoughts. The motors, 2203.5 motors. It's interesting to see how Cinewhoop motors have changed over the years. Like, there was a time when 1507 was a pretty standard Cinewhoop motor. Then we started moving to wider pancake style motors like a 2004. Now we've got a 2203. That is a big motor for a 3-inch prop. That's a big motor. It's got a lot of torque. And we know that Cinewhoop motors are generally overworked. Right? So the motors often are not at their optimal place in their efficiency curve. It's hard for me to say whether, like, I think 2004 is a pretty fair-sized motor for a 3-inch prop. 2004 can run a 4-inch prop with authority. So now we've got this 2203, which is a much bigger motor. It's adding a lot of weight, and it's hard to say whether it's overkill. I feel like this is we need to look at thrust stand results and real-world results, and I don't know. But I think my gut feeling is that this is certainly, I wouldn't want a bigger motor for a 3-inch prop, and this may be more motor than you need to get good results. We'll have to see. Some people would say 2004 is overkill. ProTech 35 HD uses 2205 motors. Well, first of all, that's 3.5-inch props, so a little difference there, but that may, 2205 may also be overkill. Hard to say. Anyway, thank you for the super chat. All right, well, that's 2 super chats, and we're 45 minutes into the stream. We're going good. 3 super chats. McConnell Studios, thank you for a $20 super chat. I installed the O3 in a 250 frame. Camera heated up so much the sides melted. Wow. I don't know why your camera would get that hot. Jeez. I've never heard of that. Has anybody else had the O3 camera get so hot that it melted your TPU? Our VTX gets super hot. I'm not sure why the camera would get that hot. That's very unusual. Cali FPV, thanks for a $5 super chat. Happy New Year, JB. Could you tell me what thrust linearization is used for? Cali FPV, here's the deal. The PID controller outputs to the motors a throttle value between 0 and 100%. Now, I want you to think about I want you to think about like how your car accelerates when you press the accelerator down. The amount of horsepower, the amount of torque that your engine makes is not linear with the throttle position, right? If you push the throttle to half throttle, the motor will rev and make a certain amount of torque. If you push it to full throttle, it may make more or it may make less. There's non-linear value there. This is less true with electronic vehicles because they have a much more linear torque curve. Well, the same is true for quadcopter motors. The RPM of the motor and the thrust that the motor makes is non-linear with the throttle position. So if I have the throttle at 25% and I raise the throttle to 50%, I will not get twice as much thrust, etc. So ultimately what the PID controller is trying to manipulate is the thrust that the motor outputs. But the PID controller has no way of knowing the exact amount of thrust that the motor is outputting. It's going to depend on motor KV and RPM, motor prop, etc., etc., etc. It's going to depend on many, many factors. It's going to depend on air density and temperature. So the best we can do is have the PID controller output a throttle value and then look at how the gyro is changing. Look at how the quadcopter is moving in response to that throttle value, and then tweak the throttle to adjust the thrust. But that's a feedback loop. And anytime you have a feedback loop, there is some delay because you raise the throttle. The motor begins to spin. The prop begins to make thrust. The quadcopter begins to rotate. The gyro detects that rotation. The PID controller goes, oh crap, that's too much thrust. We're rotating too fast. And then it brings the throttle down. The motor slows down. That loop happens again. The PID controller goes, oh crap, now we're rotating too slow. It raises the throttle. And it's constantly doing this 8,000 times a second or 4,000, whatever your PID loop rate is. Well, it turned out that you can characterize the thrust versus RPM curve, that there is a generalized thrust versus RPM relationship that is similar across lots of different motors. And thrust linearization in Betaflight tells the PID controller to apply that sort of normalization curve so that it is more closer to actually manipulating the thrust of the motor instead of just the throttle position. That's what thrust linearization does. Digital FPV, thanks for €6. Why, how fixed 48K PWM frequency rocksteady problems on O3 builds. Why does changing the ESC PWM frequency fix rocksteady problems with the O3? The short version, if there is such a thing, is that the vibrations that the gyro in the camera picks up are getting screwed up by the fact that the motor PWM frequency is too low and is causing little oscillations that confuse the gyro and make it rock steady, not be able to do what it does. And when you raise that PWM frequency, those interfering vibrations move further away from the frequencies of interest to the camera and interfere with it less. Digital F, semicolon, thank you for $2. I think drones are cool. So do I, semicolon. Thank you for your super chat. AKA, thanks for $5. I bound my Tango 2 to Crossfire on a recent build. Good for you. It binds, but Betaflight shows no inputs. Yes. On T2, it shows button press, but no stick movement. Not sure where to go. When you say it shows button presses, but no stick movements, I think you're saying that the aux channels move, but the sticks do not move. If that's true, then good news, it means your receiver is working and your flight controller is talking to the receiver. If you have your aux channels moving in the receiver tab, if you have your aux channels moving, but not your main 4 control channels, the thing that causes that is that you have failsafe mode activated. And when failsafe mode is activated, the main control channels are locked out. I've seen this happen to people when they don't understand that failsafe mode. They're like, well, I got to set up failsafe, right? I wouldn't want my quad not to failsafe. So they activate failsafe mode and they do something like this, and then failsafe mode is just activated all the time. Failsafe mode is used to trigger a fake failsafe for the sake of testing and troubleshooting. You don't need failsafe mode during normal operation. And if you activate failsafe mode, it'll do what I think you're describing. I hope that's the answer you were looking for. Bardwell, it's not in beta flight. No buttons. I'm having trouble following you what you mean by no buttons. What do you mean by no buttons? Can you type a longer, more detailed? It's hard to follow what you're saying. Let's see if that comes back. No button or stick inputs. Okay, so what that means is that your flight controller is not set up right or your receiver is not wired up right. Like you got to check the wiring. Hang on. For example, here's something I just happen to have sitting on my hard drive. As you do. You got to make sure the wiring is correct. Channel 1 goes to RX, channel 2 goes to TX. And then whichever UART, here we've got UART 4 because we're on T4 and R4. Whichever UART you're connected to. Come on. There we go. Whichever UART you're connected to in the ports tab, you need serial RX enabled. So we would go serial RX on UART 4. And then, of course, in the receiver tab, we would change Crossfire as the serial receiver protocol. And that should do it. If that doesn't do it, then a lot of times people get the TX and the RX backwards. So double check that. If that doesn't do it, then change the wires to a different UART. Would be the next thing I would check. Thomas Grana, thank you for a $10 super chat. Thomas, I don't see a message from you, so let's see if you left a message in the regular chat. I don't see any message from you other than the super chat, so I'm going to take it as a generous donation. Thank you so much. A versus B, thank you for a $5 super chat. Your message has been retracted. Here we go. Can you run linear antenna on small DJI quad and still get okay range? The answer is yes, absolutely. You'll get reduced range, but some people do that to save weight. Ayakim Sogiakas. This looks like, I'm guessing Greek. It's Greek to me. How much did your first quad cost? I honestly could not tell you. My first multi-rotor was a flight test electro hub. Let's see if I can pull up flight test electro hub from Ready to Fly Quads. Wow. Wow, that's a memory. This is the exact kit. Oh my God, this is the exact kit that I bought. I swear to God, this is the exact kit that I bought. I bought it from Ready to Fly Quads, which, by the way, don't buy from Ready to Fly Quads. I don't know if they've changed, but years ago they had terrible, terrible customer service, and I would not recommend them. I don't know. Maybe they've completely changed in the last 5 years. I wouldn't know. But this is the exact kit I got. It currently is $1 because it's completely out of date. But this is, I think this is the exact, I remember that case. Can we find the frame? Kids these days. Oh, here we go. Here's the old flight test video. Let's see here. Oh my God. So the flight test electro hub was these two pieces, these two PCBs. This is a power distribution board. You solder your ESCs to these plus and minuses. And you get, they've painted them black, but these arms are 1/2-inch poplar wood dowels that you buy from the hardware store. And you drill holes through them. And you put M3 screws on them, and the selling point was that when they break, you just go to the hardware store and buy new dowels. Yeah, so easy to repair. That was the selling point. This was before everything was carbon fiber. Here's another example of it. Oh, look at that. Look at that GoPro. Yep, there we go. That's a great example of... now, mine was a quadcopter. But that was my first multi-rotor. Was a quadcopter, something like this. Got good freaking times. I had a Wi-Fi install. I was managing a Wi-Fi install out at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. They were putting Wi-Fi in the barracks, and my company was a subcontractor to oversee the install and the design of the wireless network for the barracks. And it was like a month-long project. So I stayed out there in a hotel for a month. Go out, supervise the install, all day. And then this was when I was first learning to fly FPV. And I had my Electra Hub with me. I had my goggles with me, and I would take it out to a park. And I would fly laps around the park. And I remember that was really when I cut my teeth learning to fly FPV, was during that month. Just struggling with making left turns and right turns and flying. I wish I had recordings from those days, but I don't. I mean, I might have had DVR, I might have had SD card in my goggles. That was before I was really uploading stuff to my YouTube channel. I had uploaded a few little videos, but I wasn't really cruising yet. And I distinctly remember making some real sort of leaps forward in my ability to control the quad during that month, when I didn't have a lot to do. Because if you into Fort Leonard Wood, there's freaking nothing to do. There's nothing to do while you're out. Actually, I brought my family out because I was gone for a month. They were like, well, we'll fly you home over the weekends. And I was like, yeah, okay. So I can get home at midnight on Friday night, have all of Saturday with my family, and then on Sunday immediately leave and come back. No, thank you. So instead, I made a deal where they would bring my family out, and my family stayed with me in the hotel for a couple weeks. And I mean, my wife, because I would leave and go to work in the morning, and then she would be in Fort Leonard Wood with a 3-year-old. and like they would go over to Walmart across the street from the hotel, and they would go to the toy section and spend 45 minutes walking around the toy section while he looked at all the toys. And then when he started to get bored with that, they would buy one, like a little cheap toy, and then they would go sit outside the Walmart on the sidewalk in front of the Walmart, just over by the corner out of the way, and he would play with the toy for a little while. Then they would go back to the hotel room and be like, all right, that's our day. Oh, that's a good story. Well, I think it's a good story. Good memories. I have such good memories. Like, in a way, I wish I could go back. Like, it's so cool right now to be a part of FPV and have the amazing technology that we have, and the culture that we have, around FPV. On some level, I kind of wish I could go back to a simpler time. Not just because FPV was different. It was kind of new, and people were discovering things in a way. Everything was so new. The littlest thing that you did was groundbreaking. And now, in order to really break ground, it's a lot harder. Not that people aren't breaking ground, but also for me, because I was so inexperienced, everything was so fresh and exciting and interesting. And it's still interesting, but it's not the same. It's not the same when you've been doing it for 8+ years, which now I have. It's a lot harder for me to go, oh, wow, that's so cool. Whereas in the beginning, just everything is so cool. So, all right. Thank you for the opportunity to reminisce. Let's Fly RC. Good to see you here. Let's Fly. What would be a good simulator for someone who does not have a powerful gaming computer? FPV Freerider is one of the lowest requirement simulators I'm aware of. It was originally designed to work on an Android, on a smartphone, And so the code is very, very efficient. It's a very, very simple simulator. It doesn't have a lot of like power, But if you want something simple, that's a good one. I think that even non-gaming computers these days often come with a half-decent graphics card and can run simulators. Just set the resolution. Like I did a class recently, and in the class they had these IBM ThinkPads. They were office computers. They literally didn't have a GPU. And we were still able to run Liftoff on the internal shitty built-in GPU. Like they had a GPU, but it was the built-in like Intel GPU. It wasn't like a discrete GPU. And we just took the resolution down to 720p, and we set the screen update rate to like 24 hertz. And we set the graphics all to minimum, and they were able to get it done. So I think that most any laptop or computer that you buy today probably has enough horsepower to run Liftoff at the very least, and probably most other simulators. If you reduce the resolution and you set the graphics to minimum, you could get her done. Yeah. I would say try a free simulator. Get Orca FPV Skydive, or people are posting the Flow State Simulator. I think that one is free. I'm not 100% sure. And just get a free one, set the graphics to minimum, take the resolution down to 720p, and see if it'll work. That's what I would suggest. Wyatt Humphreys, thanks for a $5 super chat. Can you explain how water damage works? I dunked my Mach R5 underwater, and today it still works. Am I just really lucky? So yes, you're lucky, Wyatt. Water damage works in two ways. The main way that water damages stuff is through corrosion. So when you have electrical potential in the presence of electrolytes, of salts, you'll get corrosion. The metal will oxidize and form other chemical compounds that damages the electrical circuits and causes electricity to not go where it's supposed to go, and stuff will stop working. This is more of a problem in salt water because there's way more electrolytes or salt or whatever, and stuff will just oxidize immediately in salt water. In fresh water, there still can be minerals and so forth that can have this effect, but it is much slower and you're much more likely to get lucky and get away with it. The other thing is that people think that water causes electricity to flow where it's not supposed to flow. And in fact, water is actually not very conductive. And so simply dunking a quadcopter in water is not necessarily going to damage it. A lot of times you will get away with it, but usually it causes corrosion. And so that's why if you do dunk something in water, the two things they say to do are, number one, unplug it while it's underwater, if at all possible. Because the process of lifting it out of the water can create situations, I'm not exactly sure why, but it can create situations where you end up with damage occurring. And the other thing is rinse it off as soon as possible, and ideally rinse it off with alcohol or distilled water. But fresh water from the tap is better than nothing, but rinse it off because any minerals in the water that remain will potentially still let the oxidation process happen. You see cases where people have a quad come out of the water, they let it dry off, 30 minutes later it's flying just fine, and then a week later it dies. And it's because the corrosion from the little minerals and so forth that was left on the flight controller, or ESC, finally caught up with you. No Fear FPV says, I dropped a JBQ AVS in the ocean and had to swim 30 feet down to get it back. Everything except the Caddx Vista was fried. Yep. In salt water, everything dies pretty much immediately. GoPro will survive. I'm really impressed that the Caddx Vista survived. That just speaks to how durable those damn things are. Eokim Sogiakas, thank you for 2 more euros. Thank God for carbon fiber. Yeah, it's changed a lot. Drippy Ash, thanks for 5 Swiss francs. What do you think of this freestyle build for snow? Source 1 V5, Darwin FPV, Hulk AIO, Hulk VTX, Hulk camera, Racer Star 2205 motors. I think 2205 is too small for a 5-inch prop today. 2205, 2300 kV, that's a motor and prop combination from 2018. It will fly, but you won't get the best results from it. If you can get a 2306 or a 2207, you'll be doing much better. As far as the Darwin FPV stuff goes, that's supposed to be waterproof, so probably will survive snow if it's designed for a dunking. Anthony Jones, thanks for a $2 super chat. Why do I have to cycle my XT60 to get DJI working? I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. Email me if you want to dig into it. I can't even begin to guess without really getting more information. We're caught up on super chats. Let's take some more chats from the YouTube guys. I took Discord chats. I took super chats. Let's get some more chats from the... I don't think I've taken hardly any questions from the YouTube chat, so let's do that. What happened to my intro music? I used to have intro music after You're Gonna Learn Something Today. You mean this? I still got that somewhere. Hang on. Assets... Is it in end cards? No, it's not in end cards. You remember this? Remember this? Uh-huh. What about this? What are you doing in here? The least you could do is subscribe or... Uh-huh. I don't think I ever used this card. I don't think I ever used this one. I don't think I ever used this. This is 2 minutes and 45 seconds long. No, I never edited this down. No more range tests. More range tests. I don't remember this. Tony, Treppy, no. I'm just trying different things. No more range tests. You usually don't get to see this part. No, I don't want to do another range test. No. Do I ever turn on the light? Oh, here we go. Huh? What are you doing here? Just get out of here. Go subscribe to the video on your way out and join my Patreon or whatever. This is not a patron benefit, though. Yeah, I see why I didn't keep this. It was a little... It never really clicked. Where's the... surely it's here. I don't know. It's got to be here. Well, I stopped using that. I'm sure... Oh, here we go. That's it. There we go. I knew it was here. So I stopped doing those two things. The graphic intro I got rid of because it's 10 seconds. It's 10 seconds long. It contributes nothing to the actual the viewer experience. It's just indulgent. Let's say I start a video. What I need to do at the beginning of the video is start delivering content. I'm not going to show this Mr. Beast video that I just watched. Mr. Beast, you can learn so much from him about how to do YouTube right. I just watched Mr. Beast's video. I crushed a Lamborghini in a hydraulic press. He starts the video and he's like, we did all this cool stuff. We're going to crush a Lamborghini in a hydraulic press. We're going to drop a car in a pool full of Orbeez. We're going to jump a car over some buses. 15 seconds into the video, he starts the segment where he's going to jump the car over the buses. And I'm like, okay, I expect to get teased now. We're going to do 3 minutes of setup and bullshit and just dick teasing before I actually get to see the car jump the buses. No! 5 seconds later, boom, the car goes off the ramp, boom, into the buses. I'm like, damn. 5 seconds later, they put a jet engine on the car, boom, jumping off the ramp, boom, into the buses. Damn. I'm 30 seconds into the video. Already, he's given me 2 payoffs. That's how you got to approach making videos. Now, I don't claim to be at the level of Mr. Beast where I could deliver you payoffs like that at that frequency. But I thought about, you see that thumbnail and that title, you click it, and now you're coming to get something out of the video. I need to... Don't waste 10 seconds at the beginning of the video with some graphics. Take that 10 seconds and give you what you came for. And so I got rid of it. I was just like, that's not contributing to the viewer experience. In fact, when you've seen 20 of my videos, that's 10, you know that by heart. It's 10 seconds. You don't even need to see it. Okay. Why doesn't Betaflight have altitude hold? Asks Believe Stov Victor. Betaflight doesn't have altitude hold because the devs aren't interested in designing it and making it work well. That kind of thing takes a lot of time to test and make work well. And the Betaflight devs, it's open source. And so they put in what they decide they want to work on, and they just don't care because they are more focused on acro. I hope that now that GPS Rescue is getting upgraded, I hope that maybe there will be some interest and we'll get a proper altitude hold, but I don't know. Cyclimbo, exactly. Cyclimbo, going back to YouTube. The reason I got rid of those comedic outros is the current thinking among YouTube professionals is that you should not signal the end of your video. So if I say, well, in conclusion, you're like, okay, I've gotten everything I'm going to get out of this. You're going to go click away. If I say in conclusion, a lot of people are just going to be like, I watched the damn video. I know what the conclusion is. I'm gone. I'm moving on. And at that point, so what you should do instead is, without cueing the end of the video, like even saying something like, now, if you liked that, is risky because people know what you're getting at. But as much as you can, you should not cue the end of the video, but you should segue into a reference to the next video that they might want to watch. So you could say, you know, I don't know. I'm not going to give you on the spot. And so those end cards specifically signaled the video is over now. Now, the flip side is that they were entertaining. Some people found them funny and entertaining and watched them, and that maybe, but the problem is it doesn't give you a reason to click the next video. So I show you a funny little sketch, and I say, subscribe, Patreon, but there's no real impetus there. There's no motive for you to do those things. But if I say, if I just got finished telling you about Betaflight, and then I go, now, there's another video that talks about this same thing, but from a different angle. And if you love this video, I think you'll really like that one. I've given you a reason to click. And now, boom, here it is. Go click it. So, there you go. Bachgrinder leaves a funny sketch at the end, and I wait to watch that. Yeah, if it's original, Bachgrinder's sketches are original, aren't they? Like, every video has a different sketch. That's good because that encourages engagement and retention. But the sketch, putting a funny sketch, let's generalize it, putting a payoff at the end of the video encourages retention. That's good. But it doesn't lengthen the session time. So when the sketch is over, they are now going to click to a different video, and it might not be one of yours. The goal is to, number one, deliver payoffs throughout the video so that you watch the whole video all the way to the end. And then number two, segue you into another one of my videos so that your session is extended. Anyway, let's take another question. K Basie 172 asks, do you find the differences between the V2 goggles and the V2 with the O3 to be big? Is it worth getting the goggles 2 for the O3 or just keep running the V2? Is the OLED game changing? K Basie, I think that the OLED is game changing. Now that doesn't mean that everyone should spend $200 to upgrade to the goggles 2. I do think that every time I fly with OLED goggles compared to LCD, that it is I so often with OLEDs, I'm like, damn, this looks good. Damn, this looks good. And then I go look at the DVR and I go, it doesn't look that good. Why did I think it looked that good? It's got to be the OLEDs. The OLEDs just look really good. So, there's other reasons to stick with the V2 goggles. Right? And including the price, but it is an upgrade. It's a definite upgrade. Willie. W1LLY. Where's Willie? Willie had a question. Can I search for this question, Willie? Why can't I search? I saw your question, Willie, and I hadn't got to it. Now I can't find it. Ask your question again, Willie. RC Addict says, sounds like everybody is wanting TikTok-type videos. Show the interesting stuff, then move to the next thing. RC Addict, that's a tough one because I don't like the style of videos. I think that I know what you mean when you say TikTok-style videos. Videos without substance and depth, because at the end of the day, if your video is limited to 60 seconds to 3 minutes, like, you couldn't teach someone to be a nuclear physicist in 3-minute chunks. There's contents that really need depth and time. And there's people who appreciate a little bit of a slower delivery, and they have a slower attention span. They don't like being slapped in the face every 10 seconds by a soundbite or a transition. But I do think that there's value in, like, think of it this way. If you have to watch 20 minutes of content to get one payoff, and by payoff, I mean you clicked on the video because you wanted, I'm not even talking about entertainment, you wanted to learn something. And you have to watch 20 minutes of this guy blah, 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 before you like go, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that. Thank you. I really wanted to learn that. Wow, I really feel like that was worth my time. Well, if you could get 5 payoffs in 20 minutes, or 10 payoffs in 20 minutes, or 20 payoffs in 20 minutes. I mean, there's a limit because eventually your brain is saturated and you can't learn anymore. But, like, I really think that, I'm not being joking here. When I talk about Mr. Beast, whether you like his content or not, he makes extremely engaging, extremely respectful of the viewer content. And by respectful of the viewer, I mean he doesn't do this reality TV bullshit where he drags it out and teases the payoff and teases that he's sucking your life out of you and seeing how long he can just tease you and drag you, bore you until you, but you didn't leave yet. And then finally give you a payoff. He's just like, here's a payoff, here's a payoff, here's a payoff, here's a payoff. You want payoffs? I got payoffs. And it's like, yes, thank you. And that's what I strive for with my content, is to give you payoffs in the highest density possible so you get the most value for your time by watching my content. I don't always achieve that, but it's my goal. Let's see, take a couple more questions from the YouTube chat. Let's see here. Looking for a chat here. Cloud FPV. Lately, I've been getting a lot of hate for FPV on my YouTube. People even messaging me on my business email, mostly about when I do freestyle and have no visual observer. How do you deal with haters? Okay, so Cloud FPV, first of all, congratulations. When you are a small YouTuber, no one knows you exist, and you don't have haters. You also don't have anyone who watches your content. So you put content out there, it gets 57 views, and you're like, okay. I mean, maybe you're like, yay, I got 57 views. But you don't have haters. Eventually, you get to a point where you become big enough that the haters start noticing you. So, congratulations, you have grown to a point where there are haters who notice you. That is a sign of success. Now, I don't mean that there are people who take that and they say, well, the more haters I've got, the better I'm doing. No, no, no. That's not don't go there, because that leads you down this really shitty road where you do shitty things just to stir people up. But the fact that you've got haters now when you didn't have haters before doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It just means that you're succeeding at getting big enough that now the haters have noticed you. So, okay. Number 2. Never, 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 never put content in your video. I'm not a lawyer. This is my personal advice, though. Never put anything in your video that unequivocally shows that you're violating an FAA regulation. Now, another piece of advice I could give you would be to never violate FAA regulations. Fine. You have told me that people yell at you for flying without a spotter. Now, maybe you've got a spotter and maybe you don't. But personally, I would just not show myself on the video. I would do my flight. I would not really make it obvious where I was standing and where the line of sight might or might not be and whether I do or don't have a spotter. The more you leave that ambiguous, the less the haters will go, where's his spotter? They'll just be like, nice flight or shitty flight. So you can take steps to reduce the likelihood that people will accuse you of breaking the rules. And again, not that I'm encouraging you to break the rules. You should follow the rules. But maybe you had a spotter and they just were not obviously on camera. And now people are yelling at you and making a big stink. And then at the end of the day, what are you going to do? If you flew without a spotter, then you broke the rules. You knew you were breaking the rules at the time that you broke them. And then when people are like, hey, you're breaking the rules. They're right. You broke the rules. So, if you're not okay, if you're not ready to take that heat, don't put you breaking the rules up on the internet. And here's the thing. Brandon Bean says, I reply to those comments with, I had a spotter, you can't see them. You got to be really careful about that. So if you are lying, let's presume for the sake of argument that you didn't have a spotter and now you are lying. And you are relying on the fact that you don't think you can get caught in the lie. Okay? You have to be very careful about making affirmative statements that you know to be untrue. Because when you make an affirmative statement, I had a spotter, you can't see them, you are committing yourself to that story. And if that story is not true, you have reduced your options for the future when you get a call from the FAA. So this is again, not legal advice. I am not a lawyer. I do think a lot about these things, though. A defense attorney will tell you, do not make any statements. Because as long as you have not made a statement, a whole lot of things could be true. And you haven't gotten caught telling a lie and impugned your credibility. As soon as you make a statement, you are now locking out all the other potential options. And you have reduced the potential to defend yourself in the future. So now when you get a call from the FAA, they're going to say, well, I see here that you said on your YouTube comments that you had a spotter. Where were they? Okay. Where were they? Oh, you didn't have a spotter, so you were lying. It's never good to reduce the potential ways that you could defend yourself against an attack. It is always good to keep all your options open as long as possible until forced to choose a path. At the strategic, like Sun Tzu, The Art of War, right? I don't know the exact quote, but you should choose the optimal response at the optimal time, and by locking yourself into a response early for no reason, there is no reason, there is no benefit in you lying to someone on the internet. Just don't answer them. Just ignore them. Or maybe make a vague statement like, well, like I sometimes say, all of my flights are in accordance with the law. And if anybody from the FAA wants to know more about that, they can contact me, but I'm not going to defend myself to somebody in the comments. A spotter cannot be using binoculars from a different location than the pilot. Spotter has to be co-located with the pilot per FAA. Okay. What does the number in XT60 or XT30 mean? Asks G3RM. It's the number of continuous amps that the connector is rated. 30 amps versus 60 amps. XXX601 in the Discord. Thank you for being a patron, by the way. Got black bars to the left and right on my Sky O4 is in 4.3 mode with the Walksnail VRX. Goggle is in 4.3 mode. 69 screen is full screen but stretched. Walksnail is, Walksnail is always in 16:9. It's always widescreen. Walksnail doesn't support 4.3. So I don't see how 16:9 could be stretched. Oh, the Sky O4s are a 4.3 screen. Are you telling me that the Sky O4s are taking the 16:9 720p input from the Walksnail VRX and stretching it to a 4.3 screen? And not letterboxing it like they should? Is that what you're telling me? XXX601? Waiting for you to get back to me there, brother. Willie, I will get your question next. I see that your question's being reposted. I'm waiting for XXX601 to get back to me. I don't know if there's a way around that. Is there a way in the Sky O4X to change the HDMI input to letterbox? So I actually have some Sky O4X, Cobra X, a couple of other goggles people are lending me. I'm borrowing them off my patrons. You're saying 4.3 has black bars left and right. That's clearly wrong. So XXX601, I will have a set of Sky O4X this week to test. I don't have an answer for you right now, but this is why I asked to borrow a bunch of goggles from my patrons, so I could test a bunch of goggles with the Walksnail VRX. So we'll have to get back to that, but I don't have an answer for you on that now. Aldo Garcia, thank you for a $5 super chat, and thank you for asking the question to the patron. Aldo Garcia says, why would my black box data contain no stick data? There's only one reason I can think why this would be, Aldo Garcia. So in Betaflight 4.3, they added the ability to change. I actually don't even think this is in the GUI yet. No. I wish this was in the GUI. It's only in the CLI. Hang on. So we've got these options here. Black box disable PIDs, black box disable RC, etc. These new CLI options in 4.3 disable the logging of certain black box data. So the only way I can think why that would happen would be if, I'm going to guess it's black box disable RC. So Aldo Garcia, look in your CLI, type get black box, and then look for black box disable RC. If that is on, that would cause, I'm guessing that's the right one because RC is your sticks. I'm guessing that that would cause your stick data to not be logged. I'm going to get Willie next. Take it easy. Take it easy. Brandon Beans says black box disable set point. Anyway, you just want all of these to be off. I don't know how it would have got turned on, but you want all of them to be off. Let's get Willie's question. Aldo G, if you're able to check this right now, I'd love for you to get back to me while we're still on the stream. Because if it's not that, then I'm really stumped. But that's what I think it is. All right, we got a question here from Willie. He's been asking this question the whole live stream, and I've been cruelly ignoring him. Brandon Beans, what do you mean gyroflow snippets will disable? More info, Brandon Beans. Willie asks, I've got a Nazgul 5 V2 with the iFlight Success E F4 stack and 45 amp ESC. I'm thinking about replacing the flight controller with the SpeedyBee. Will it work with my current ESC? Yes. The wiring is different. You'll need to redo the wiring, but yes, it'll work fine. I'm flying only on 4S packs. This has got me with some problems to power up the HDZero Freestyle VTX. Yeah, that's fine. If you think you need the SpeedyBee F7 for some reason, go for it. Yeah, as long as you repin the flight controller, I don't see any reason that wouldn't work. The only gotcha that I know of with the SpeedyBee flight controller is the SpeedyBee puts the S-Bus wire from the DJI Air unit on R2, and it puts the default receiver plug, if you're using plugs, on UART2. So if you're using a discrete receiver on the standard plug and you have a DJI Air unit, then you have to remove the S-Bus wire or they interfere. I ran into that on a recent build. Other than that, the SpeedyBee has been really good to me. John Goblin says, I'll take a 20-minute RC test flight video over a 4-minute TikTok-style video. 1,000% John Goblin. RC test flight does a fantastic job of delivering small payoffs throughout the video. RC test flight is a great example of a YouTuber who, he's not delivering Mr. Beast, Ferrari into a school bus style of payoffs. But he does deliver small payoffs throughout the video, builds tension, resolves tension repeatedly in a very, very satisfying way. He does it. He is delivering payoffs, just a different kind of payoffs. Let's see here. No announcements or leaks on the Session 6 yet, PDX. Don't know anything more about that. We got Willie's question now. Thank goodness. Let's get a couple of the other super chats which have come in. Joachim Sogiakis, thanks for 2 more euros. I got his name correct. Fantastic. Controller Sport, thanks for 5 euros. Greetings from Germany. Thanks for your help getting into FPV. What is your best 5-inch motor at the moment? Do you think the change from V2 to Goggle 2 is worth it? Best 5-inch motor. Well, you know, I want to show you. Let's take a look over here. This is my website, fpvknowitall.com. fpvknowitall.com. Home of the ultimate FPV shopping list, which has recommended parts in various categories. We just did a little bit of a cosmetic upgrade on the site to make it a little easier to scroll through some of these products. I'm happy to say now that the cosmetic upgrade has rolled out, we have also got a huge stack of updates. We paused updates because we didn't want to make a bunch of changes that got lost when we did the cosmetic upgrade. But now that the cosmetic upgrade's done, we're also updating a whole bunch of other pages. So very excited about that. But it's got my recommendations for motors in the 5-inch size. FPV Cycle 25mm Imperial. Emax Eco is one of the best value motors today. The Zing 2 is a little bit of a better motor than the Emax Eco at a little higher price point. It's hard to go wrong with any of those. Newbie Drone Flow 2306, solid motor at a good price. T-Motor F40, excellent motor, really expensive. I think it's like up to, it's at least $27. $27. So a little bit more expensive. So these are some suggestions, and I would tell you to head on over there and check that out when you're looking for product recommendations. Aldo G confirms that those options were disabled. It's fantastic. Glad I was able to solve that. Controller Sport, thanks for 5 euros. Oh, we got you. Oh, is it worth it to change the V2 to the Goggle 2? Controller Sport, if I already owned a set of Goggle 2, I would be hard-pressed to spend $600 more to upgrade to the... I'm sorry, if I owned a set of V2 goggles, I would be hard-pressed to spend $600 to upgrade to the Goggle 2. Now, you could sell your V2 goggles for at least $300, and the Goggle 2 does have a lot going for it. It's lighter. It fits your face. Some would say worse. The OLED screens are very nice. Smaller field of view. Some people have trouble getting the full screen in focus. I can make it work, but if you're really picky about that, you might not like it. The real advantage of the Goggle 2 is the OLED screens, I think, and the 1080p resolution. If you're not flying the O3 Air unit, I think that it's a lot harder to justify upgrading the Goggle 2. But it is a little bit of an upgrade. Henry Gruitt, thanks for a $2 super chat. Can you use a Polar Nano camera with the O3 unit? No, you can only use the O3 camera at this time. They are not cross-compatible between the V2 and the new O3. Jacob Breezy FPV, thanks for a $2 super chat. Just want to say thanks for always helping. Thank you, Jacob Breezy, for the donation. Toyota Tech FPV, thanks for a $10 super chat. Can 2 Crossfire Nano RX receivers pair together for Diversity long range? No. There's the only option to buy the Diversity RX. Yes, you have to buy the Diversity RX. Anthony Young, thanks for a $10 super chat. And Scott Besson, thank you for a $5 super chat. Is it a terrible idea to countersink some of the holes in a 3mm base plate? Why are you countersinking it? That's the question, Scott. There is no question that countersinking those holes removes material and makes the plate weaker. I don't think there's any debate about that. You've got a 3mm base plate, but now you've turned it into a thinner base plate in some sense. So, like, is it because you don't want the battery to hit the screw heads? Could you just add a battery pad? At least it's a 3mm. At least it's a 3mm. So you got some material to work with. Okay. Zeph D in the Discord asks, this is my first build. Should there be more slack on the motor wires? That looks fine to me. I don't see them actually being under tension. So you don't want them under tension because they'll break or rip off in an impact. But they look like they've got just about enough slack to be okay. So I think you're all right. That's my personal take. You're mighty brave putting soldering up on the internet. Should we nitpick the soldering? It's not the worst. It's pretty solid. I'd like to see more flow out to the edge of the pads. So this looks a little cold to me. See right here at the corner where the solder has not flowed to the edge of the pad? Like especially on this one, we can just see the corner of the pad. So it looks a little dry maybe just a little cold. I don't even think I would go back and redo them. I think it's going to be fine. But they're just a little cold and maybe a little dry. Overall, though, your prep looks good. I don't see any straggly wires sticking out. Everything is stripped consistently. You have about 1 to 2 millimeters, maybe 2.5 millimeters of wire coming out. Very consistent stripping. So your wire prep is consistent. Frankly, the amount of solder on each joint is relatively consistent. You've clearly got a technique going on here. This one could be the little down into the puddle a little more. This one looks a little dry. So in general, I think you could stand to put a little more solder into these joints so it had a little more ability to sort of wet out and puddle and create a little bit of a ball. So where I wouldn't want to see each of these individual wire ends like I'm seeing them. And I would want to see the solder flowing out to the edges of the pad. Overall, though, I think you're doing real good. This is a solid B plus soldering for a random person on the internet. Obviously, for a professional, this is trash. Throw it in the garbage. You're fired. If you are a professional, like actual soldering professional, this is completely unacceptable. Go back, practice more. But for a random hobbyist on the internet, this is like a solid B plus, I would say. That's what I would say. And I wouldn't go back and redo any of that. I would just enjoy flying the quad. That is going to be fine for forever. Mupshot says, give each wire a little pull test. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Give them a little pull test. Make sure they're connected. If you had one that was really cold, then maybe it would pop up. But I bet they're all solid. I bet they're all solid. Do I have HDZero goggles yet? Asks Archimedes in the Discord. No. They're supposed to arrive Wednesday from Hong Kong. I was excited. So I reached out to HDZero. I reached out to Ryan Quellet and Carl, a month ago, and I said, hey, I would love to be included. I basically said, hey, do you guys intend to send me a review copy, or should I get in on the retail order? Because this was before the first pre-order, whenever that was. I said, look, I don't really care, but I don't want to take up a pre-order slot if you guys are going to send me a review copy. So just let me know. And they were like, well, we're gonna hold a copy for you, a review copy for you. They said we're not giving out review copies to anybody. He said, but if you decide to review them and you decide to keep them, then we'll give you a discount. We're going to do a discount for the reviewers. I was like, okay, well, we'll see. But they said, we're going to send you a set. And I was like, okay. So I didn't put a pre-order in. And then I saw other reviewers starting to release reviews. And mine hadn't come yet. And I thought, oh, well, they must be in the pre-test group. So they asked me if I wanted to be part of the pre-test group. And I said, well, look, I usually prefer to just get the retail product and try it out, because I hate it when I make content about a goggle. I release content, it makes a big splash, and then whatever I complained about, they're like, oh yeah, we fixed that. And then my video has just made a big splash and riled up a bunch of people, and it turns out it's for nothing. So I said, well, look, I don't want to be part of the pre-test group. Let me know when you've got a final product. I'll be excited to review it. So I saw these other reviewers starting to release reviews. Nick Burns, it's a bot grinder. And I was like, and they were like, oh yeah, well, here's Here's tracking for yours. I was like, okay. So mine are arriving on Wednesday. I don't know why they didn't come, but they didn't. And whenever they come, then I'll review them. I am disappointed that I wasn't able to be part of the initial flush. I don't want to impute motivations without evidence, but I'm not really mad about it. I'm disappointed. I'm not mad about it because, like, if I was like sitting in a meeting and people were saying, well, which reviewers are we going to send product to? Which reviewers are we most excited to see review our product? I haven't been as enthusiastic about HDZero in the past as some other people have been. So, like, I'm not saying this happened, but if it did happen, I would be like, yeah, no, I get that. But there you go. What's the best indoor whoop with cadecs for DJI Digital? K-Basey, I don't think there is one. That's my humble opinion. My humble opinion. Aaron Ciotti in the chat. If you're here, Aaron Ciotti, weigh in. In my humble opinion, the smallest aircraft that carries a Vista with what I consider to be acceptable flight performance is either, and I'm talking about a naked Vista, so not a full Vista with the heat sinks, but a naked Vista. It's maybe a 95 millimeter Cinewhoop can do okay. That's a 2.5-inch prop. Or like a 3-inch toothpick can do okay with a naked Vista. I'm happy with the way those fly. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. But once you get down to 85 millimeters and below, in my opinion, the flight characteristics really suffer. And 85 millimeter is on the edge, but 75 millimeter is just like, no, stop, no, just no. So you can find 75 millimeter quads with naked Vistas on them, and you could buy one of those and try it. I hesitate to call it the best. It's like, because you're compromising so much in terms of flight performance that, is it the best? I mean, it's the best of a bad situation. I would say if you insist on flying a quadcopter indoors with DJI, get something like the iFlight Alpha C85, I think it is, with a naked Vista. I would stay away from the Beta FPV has some naked Vista whoops. I would stay away from them. I think Beta FPV build quality is extremely inconsistent. As good as their products look, if you get a good one, you'll be happy. If you get a bad one, it'll die and you'll be really angry, and there's not a lot you can do about it. But I would say think about like a 95 millimeter whoop. But at that point, it's not really a whoop, is it? It's a Cinewhoop or a... You're not really getting that tiny whoop experience. I just don't think DJI can fit that need. Ender FPV says the Beta FPV 85X digital whoop got me to iGal finals. Ender FPV, I would say that's more about your skill as a pilot than the whoop itself, but kudos to that. How many frames per second does an analog goggle display? Asked Inesk. 30 frames per second, NTSC and PAL. Well, 25 frames per second for PAL. Iric Toft says, honestly, JB, your best reviews come out on the heels of others because you go back and refute some of the common logic behind the others in a few hours. Well, maybe, Iric, you're right. But in terms of view count and ad revenue and affiliate revenue, those reviews do worse. So I care about all of those things. I mean, I would like to release... My goal is to release a complete balanced review with pros and cons on the day of release as quickly as possible, so I fulfill my ethical obligation as a reviewer to do right by my viewers and by people who take my advice, while still getting a bazillion views and a fair amount of ad revenue, and hopefully affiliate revenue if it's a product worth buying. So if I release the best review of the product 3 weeks after everyone else has done it, I guarantee it will get half as many views or less. Because a lot of people have already decided. They've watched as many reviews as they're going to watch. They decided to pull the trigger, or they decided not to pull the trigger, and now they're just not interested anymore. So it's too bad. How can I buy the HDZero goggles from India? Asked Abhishek Das. The only way to buy the HDZero goggles is to buy direct from the HDZero store. If they won't ship to India, I don't know how you could do it. Abhishek, I have talked to people who live in India before. A lot of companies don't want to ship into India. I don't really know why, but it's a common thing. What these people do is they have a remailing service. So you subscribe to a remailing service in Europe, for example, or I don't know what country would be best for you. You have the product shipped to the remailer, and then the remailer ships it to you in India. That is a thing I've seen a lot of other people do. I don't know if that's feasible for you, but that I think would be your only option. Oliver Doth, thank you for a €5 donation. Is there a risk of voltage spikes with a 4S quad on the 5-volt VTX or cam pad so a Walksnail Avatar 1S receiver dies? Oliver, that's a tough one. I think that risk is always present. I would put a small capacitor on that 5-volt pad if you want to be really careful about that. The 5-volt regulator should not have voltage spikes. It should be properly filtered. But should is not always is. Miguel T, thanks for a $5 super chat. Back to gaming after years. Right thumb joystick while aiming on Call of Duty seems inverted. Has this happened to you? Afraid this could affect my FPV skills. So, Miguel, you're not the first person to notice this. Some people set their FPV joystick up to match the controls of an FPS shooter on Xbox. I believe that is mode 4 is what would do that. Some people would invert their pitch stick. Personally, I don't do this. Now, I'm not an elite FPS player, but I play video games all the time with inverted pitch. No problem. I go fly. No problem. I think that your brain will just adjust. So I would say give it a couple weeks and see if your brain just adjusts, and then it just becomes not an issue. But if you simply cannot get your brain to adjust, then you can just flip the pitch stick. It's not the end of the world. I don't recommend it because it limits your ability to fly other people's quads, for them to fly your quad. It just is confusing to be like the odd man out. But I've had people who say, look, no matter what I tried, I just couldn't get my brain to flip. And if that's you, then you could just invert the pitch stick and it's not a big deal. What is real? Thank you for a $5 super chat. What's a better budget motor? Emax Eco 2306 1700 versus T-Motor Velox. I would probably take the Eco. The Velox is okay, but the Eco, I just think, has more of a history around it of being solid. I'll bet they're actually pretty comparable, though. So I think I would pick the Eco just because I know it's solid, and the Velox I just don't think has been around as long or has as many people buying it. Miguel T, thank you for a $5 super chat. My HDO2 won't stop beeping once the cells drop below 3.9 volts. Any non-destructive solution? So, Miguel, there is no way to change the low voltage dropout on the HDO2, but the low voltage dropout on the HDO2 should not be 3.9 volts. It should be like 3.5 volts. It's still maybe 3.6 or something. It's still higher than it needs to be. But if it's doing it at 3.9, something is wrong. The only workaround I can think of, Miguel, is to get a cable with a voltage regulator in it, so the goggle always sees 9 volts. But then how are you going to know when the battery's low? You could always contact Fat Shark and see if this is something they can repair for you. We've got just 6 more minutes in the stream. We're coming to the end of the stream. Oh, I said not to do that, didn't I? Don't telegraph the end of the stream. Aaron Ciotti is going to be streaming. He's going to post links to his stream here in the chat, and you guys can keep watching Ciotti. We're going to keep going for just a few more minutes, though. Kenny Kobe, glad you like the Xylo budget motor for sure. Is Buttonhead better than countersunk JP Gaming? It's hard to say, JP. Buttonhead screws, I mean, they're fine. Countersunk screws are fine too. Countersunk just weakens the plate a little bit. Chase Sargent wants to know, did you have the analog or the HD camera in the drone for the last part of your 5-part series, JB Edition drone build kit? Probably the digital camera, because I usually build the analog first and then take the analog out and do the digital. It was probably digital. iNesk wants to know, why are there so few 5-inch drones that have their props mounted under the arms? Doesn't that have advantages? iNesk, most 5-inch drones are designed to land on their belly, and so they put the motors up. If you put the props inverted, then you have to move the arms up, and then it's harder to land and take off again without putting feet on the drone. So some of it is just convention about the way 5-inch frames have been designed, but I'm not sure if the advantages are not as pronounced with a 5-inch compared to like a 3-inch. How do you delete DVR off the Walksnail VTX without using USB? You can format the storage, delete it all. I don't know about deleting individual files because I don't really interact with them very much except but to USB and get them off. Where do I get these sweet FPV shirts? This exact shirt is from my Teespring store. It's linked below all of my videos. This exact shirt is on my Teespring store though. Yeah, it's one of these ones. I'm not sure. It's probably this one. The Comfort Tee, Classic Tee, Tri-Blend Tee. I don't know. Premium. What about Premium? I think it's the Comfort Tee. This is the one I'm currently wearing. Yeah. Feel free to pick that up. Sidian, you've been trying to ask this question all chat, and I've kind of half seen it and then not answered it. If you have used the ICM 42688 gyro, what has been your experience with it? I can't say I have enough experience with the 42688 to comment. I have heard of the things you're talking about, which is people having wobble issues and gyro issues. And I believe it was Dominic Clifton, but I'm not 100% sure it was him. This is the kind of thing he would comment on, though, who said that the problem that the gyro is fine, but the flight controller designers are not giving it clean power. That the ICM 42688 needs clean power or it'll give bad results. And he said it's the flight controller designers. Whoever you point the finger at, there are more people having problems with the 42688, in my opinion, than with the BMI 270. So I might be a little bit disinclined to buy a flight controller with the 42688 gyro, unless I knew for a fact that it was well designed and people weren't having problems with it. The BMI 270 seems fairly safe these days. Because like saying, oh, no, the gyro's fine. It's just the flight controller design that's the problem. Okay, well, cool. If I worked for InvenSense, then I'd be like, yes, my gyro is validated. But as a user, who cares? It just isn't working as well. So. Okay, folks, that is going to bring us to the end of the stream. It's coming up on 3 o'clock. Thank you so much for sticking with me for a few hours today. I'm very glad to get to hang out with you. Go hang out with Aaron Ciotti next. I will see you tomorrow at 8 p.m. for my Monday evening stream. Happy flying, you guys. Have a great stream, Ciotti. That is it. We're out of here. As soon as I figure out how to